Welcome back to The Remote Life. My name is Han Talbot, also known as Han Meets World, and today we'll be chatting with Hannah Brown. Originally from Australia, Hannah is the head of content at e-Residency, which offers individuals the freedom to easily start and run a global business in a trusted EU environment. In this episode, we talk about life in Estonia and the digital nomad visa, as well as the e-Residency process and how other countries could learn from Estonia's infrastructures. So grab a coffee, a tea, or something stronger, and let's get started. Hannah, welcome to the Remote Life podcast. How are you today?
Thank you, Han, for having me. I'm really good to be here.
Awesome. So why don't we kick things straight off? Tell us about your remote life journey and how you've got to where you are so far.
So I suppose you could say in some ways I've been remote all my life. I grew up in many countries. My parents worked in airlines. So I spent a lot of time in Fiji and obviously in Australia, if you can hear my accent, and in other countries around the world as well. So remote has kind of, been fairly natural for me since I was very little. And I've observed my parents from a young age working in different countries and therefore, going back and forth from Australia to Fiji to countries in Africa and in Asia as well. So for me, it's just sort of part of life, I think. Mm. But more recently, about 7 years ago, I moved to Europe to do a master's in Switzerland, in Geneva. And then I worked there for a few years and then moved to Estonia, where I currently am, working for the e-Residency of Estonia program, which is all about remote work, remote entrepreneurship, and helping people around the world, digital nomads and other entrepreneurs run their business from anywhere. So, yeah, it's kind of a natural progression from being a child on the beaches of Fiji to being in cold Estonia now.
That sounds so amazing. I love how so many of us have like backstories where, so for example, I grew up in Spain for a few years as a kid. And so I'm pretty sure that like when I was about 12, I used to do extra Spanish classes and we'd be like outside in this tiny Spanish village. But again, you were sitting outside learning. And I would say like, actually, I feel like I learned more Spanish from being in that kind of environment versus then like going back into school about a month later and being in these like four walls. And I'm always kind of thinking like, wow, that I feel like that was probably like where it first started for me, was this kind of like, I don't want to be confined to a dark space and like one place for the rest of my life, just because that's what has always been the thing. So I think that makes total sense. And that sounds like such an exciting like childhood.
Yeah, my parents tell a funny story about when I was little and we actually came back from Fiji to Australia and I went to school and I got in trouble for taking my shoes off in the playground. And I was like, why am I not allowed to take my shoes off? In Fiji, we played in the playground like, barefoot all the time. I think the teachers in Australia were like, oh my gosh, who is this wild child? But that's kind of like a very small example of how I think I've probably lived my life ever since. Like, these rules are made to be broken, right?
Yeah, I just want to live my life, man.
Take my shoes off.
Good grass. Oh, well, that leads perfectly into it. So tell us about life in Estonia and how come you decided to pick Estonia?
I'll start with the second question first. I actually moved here for the job that I'm working in now. I'm head of content at e-Residency, which is a digital ID that the Estonian government provides to foreign entrepreneurs to start a company here. And when I was actually in Switzerland studying my master's, I was doing a lot of research around digital citizenship, remote work, remote entrepreneurship, future of work, these types of topics. And e-Residency kept coming up and I sort of became a little bit obsessed with it and followed the journey and actually became an e-resident myself, came to Estonia in 2018. And I remember it was around the same time. It was around this time of year. And I remember standing in the town square in Tallinn and looking around and saying, I think I could live here. This is a nice place. And then a year later or a year and a half later, the e-Residency was advertising my role and I applied. And within a month or 2 months, I was living here. So it was all sort of meant to be. It was like a very one of these kind of universe given things. And in terms of living here, it's really, I've been here for 3.5 years now. I moved here a few months before the pandemic. So I would actually say that I have had a different experience to if the pandemic hadn't happened. It probably would have been very different. But in a way, it was a good thing because it meant that I stayed here. I had to stay here. I had to get to know the country. I had to make friends very quickly. And I got to travel a lot within the country as well, because we couldn't really move around the world that much at the time. So I think it's really only been in the last year now that I've really started to remember that there's a world out there.
It's funny, you think like after, even just 2 years, it make it coming together as people again. I feel like it's giving us a bit of like a shock in a way, like, oh, person in real life. So that makes total sense. What's your favourite thing about Estonia?
I think actually the seasons. I'm in Australia. We don't, I mean, some parts of Australia maybe have seasons, like I think Tasmania, if I think about it. But Sydney, where I'm from, is very much like mostly summer. And then there's a few weeks of sort of cold, cool, dry winter in quotation marks. And that's about it. But here they really have the full seasons, and they have this really dynamic transformation between each season. And at the moment, we're moving into sort of from between spring into summer, and it's just absolutely beautiful seeing all of nature coming alive, and not just the leaves and the trees and the animals, but also the people as well. Like the Estonian people they're so connected to the nature here and the land, the forests and everything. So they're sort of almost, you can visibly see how happy and like sunny and talkative and cheerful the people become as nature also perks up as well. So I think that side is probably my favorite.
That's so sweet. I was like kind of getting caught up in the sort of the story of that then. I was like, wow.
Well, but like actually the nature here is something that I think a lot of people maybe don't know about around the world. If you've ever been to Norway or Sweden or Finland, you would know that there are a lot of forests, like and these beautiful silver birch trees and pine trees and these kinds of things, oak trees as well. And there's really lovely lakes and like bogs where you can walk and see bird life and deer and moose and all these types of animals as well. And Estonia actually has a little bit of that as well. It doesn't have any mountains. It's very flat, but it does have beautiful forests and lakes and these kind of what they call bogs, which are like sort of swampy, lakey, peat-filled areas where there's a lot of diverse flora and fauna. So, and then the other thing that Estonia has, which I think surprises people, is it has islands. It has over 2,000 islands. Some are really small, but the bigger ones are really nice, actually, destinations to go and stay. And you can stay in Airbnbs there. And Estonia has a very digital landscape as well. So everywhere has Wi-Fi, so you don't have to worry about that. So for any
dream.
Yeah. So for anyone who's a digital nomad who likes kind of getting away from the normal and being sort of, a little bit more remote, a little bit more in solitude, I think these islands are a really nice place to visit for that as well.
No, Chris from the panel, so House of Hiatus, Chris, he put a picture up on LinkedIn from like a lake that I don't know if he'd been wild swimming that day, but he had like taken a hip flask of tea and like gone to this beautiful lake, and it just looked unreal. It just honestly looks so peaceful. And then on top of the fact that they have Wi-Fi there too, do we need anything more?
Yeah, and I think the country itself is like growing in terms of the facilities it provides for digital nomads and remote workers. It's something that they're putting effort into, like making sure that businesses are prepared for foreigners who come here and work and maybe aren't necessarily staying for like, ages, but maybe like a month at a time or something. So there are more and more places, not just in Tallinn, the capital city, but also in some of the smaller towns like Tartu, which is a beautiful university town on a river in southeastern Estonia, or Narva, which is the summer capital, which is on the Baltic coast. And then also the islands, as I mentioned as well. There are more things popping up there, I think, for people to find and locate themselves and stay. And
it sounded like such a like hidden gem, and the more I hear about it, the more I'm like, it's got to be on the list. It's got to be on the list. Like obviously there's Latitude 59 coming up. Are you going to that?
I am. Yes, we're going to have like most of our team there, along with our colleagues at Invest Estonia and Visit Estonia, the tourism board, and work in Estonia as well. So if anyone is in town at the end of May, please come and find us. We'll be very prominent, I'm sure, in the festival, and we're all very friendly. We can chat to you about Estonia and e-residency and everything. So
For sure.
yeah.
Everyone's so like happy to help and just so community driven. I think that's what the vibe that I got from the panel in London, that it's just such a refreshing energy of entrepreneurs and businesses who just want to like create a big community. What do you think is kind of like the most appealing side of like, do you want to just talk to us a bit more about it? Like the entrepreneur side, the startup side, like tell us about it.
Yeah, so I think even before you get to the community part and the entrepreneurship culture here, the way that the country has developed over the last 30 years is that they've basically made sure that everything can be done online, digitally. So I think the ease of doing business online and from anywhere is probably the number one draw card. It just means that you don't have to worry about like paperwork. You don't have to worry about notaries, getting things stamped. It's all very streamlined, digitally done, from starting the company to running it, doing taxes, doing accounting, these kinds of things. So that's sort of the first big, I think, benefit of doing business in Estonia compared to some other countries. But then, like you mentioned, the community is a huge aspect, and not just, I would say, the e-residency community, but the business and the startup community in Estonia. I mean, it is a small populated country, but it feels very integrated and networked. So you're only like one person away from knowing the right person at this startup or the right person in government who can help you navigate your way through regulation, these kinds of things. And the events like Latitude, like Startup Day and Tartu are the best way to get to know that and to meet people and sort of integrate yourself into the culture here. And everyone speaks English as well in the business scene, so that makes things a bit easier. And Estonians, just in general, like I've said this so many times, I feel like a broken record, but they're kind of entrepreneurial in their DNA. And not in a way that they like want to make money, but it's just they want to solve problems. So if you have anything that you need help with, or you have questions about, or you have issues, or you want to just meet the right person, talk to people here. Even if you're not here, connect on LinkedIn, ask for their advice, and they will try and help you, because it is very much in their nature to do that, to solve issues and help you navigate business and the startup ecosystem here.
That's so refreshing to hear. Like it sounds really exciting. But I'm just thinking, for people who maybe already are freelance or already have a small business, or can people still apply for e-residency? Is that still a thing?
Yeah, if you can definitely apply. If you're a freelancer and, for example, you're a sole trader, so you're self-employed, for example, you don't have a company, have a look and see if becoming an e-resident and starting a private limited company in Estonia could be a benefit for you, because when you're a sole trader, when you're self-employed, you're obviously personally responsible for all the work you do and like the debts and liabilities that you have in your activities. When you have a private limited company, you can limit your liability to the company. So, and you can pay yourself a salary or a fee from contract your services from your company. So you can sort of protect yourself in that sense. So having an OU in Estonia, which is the name of a private limited company here, could actually be a benefit for freelancers. If you already have a business, then it really depends on what you're looking to do. So, for example, if you're in the UK and you have a business in the UK and you're actually realizing that most of your clients are in Europe, and you're doing most of your work in euros, or you need to apply for like funding in Europe or a grant or something in Europe, and you can't use your British company, then maybe having a European company based in Estonia would be one option for you. Or if you live outside of Europe, in third countries, for example, if you're in Turkey or in Ukraine, and so you're just outside the EU, but you have a lot of work and activities that you want to do here, having an OU in Estonia could be a really good way of doing that. The third option the third type of person I'll talk about are other Europeans, because obviously having the company in the EU part is not necessarily the catch for them. But they might live in a country like Spain or Germany or even France, where it's very expensive to start a company there. And it's also very expensive to run it. And there's a lot of bureaucracy to get there. So it often takes a really long time and paperwork and like visiting lawyers and notaries and accountants to get your business up and running. Whereas if you're an e-resident, you can do it in a few hours online. So those are just a few reasons why you might, if you're already an entrepreneur or a freelancer and you're looking at e-residency and wondering whether it's for you, that there are a few things that maybe you can think about in your own activities about becoming an e-resident.
I've been thinking about it more and more, honestly. Like, some of this is for me as well, but I know that for some people, they will also be thinking about it, especially from the UK. Yeah, it keeps coming into, like, kind of popping up on my to-do list more, like, the more I talk about it with people. That seems like such a simple, straightforward system. And yeah, the fact that you can have it done in a few hours, that's crazy. That's so wild.
Well, I just want to make sure, I just want to clarify that becoming an e-resident takes longer than a few hours. The application form, the online application form, takes probably about 30 minutes to an hour. But then you need to wait because it is a government issued document. The Police and Border Guard of Estonia do a background check, and that can take a couple of weeks. And then the digital ID card is actually sent to a pickup location of your choice around the world. And that can take a week or two to get there as well. So, it might take anywhere between like 2 weeks and 8 weeks to actually get that ID card in your hand. But once you have the ID card, then you can start the company, and that process is really quick. You can do that in a couple of hours. So, yeah, I just want to make sure that that's really clear to people that are listening. I also wanted to say that around the e-residency program, we've built up a directory of private business service providers to help e-residents. So, and they provide services to different types of e-residents. So there are some that specialize in freelancers or solopreneurs, as we call them. For example, Zolo is quite a well-known brand in that space. In Spain, there's another one called Companio who are helping solopreneurs as well start businesses and run them. And then there are sort of more the bigger firms like EY or PwC, or there's a few local ones in Estonia as well, Silverhunt. They can help bigger companies with their operations in Estonia. So this is something that we've curated on our website. It's called the e-Residency Marketplace, and there are over 100 private business service providers there. And they know about starting business in Estonia. They know about the sort of things to look out for, whether it's accounting, whether it's taxes, which is something that everyone needs to think about when starting a business. And they can help with all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to mention that as well, so that for those of you who might be thinking, oh, this all sounds great, but like a bit intimidating, you can get help as well.
That's really, really cool. That's what I didn't even know that. So that's really awesome that there's those support systems in place for sure. And I guess, like, off the back of that, is there anything that you think that other countries can learn from this system?
Yeah, I mean, I think the really cool thing about e-residency, which sort of attracted me to it from the start, is the fact that there is a government who's willing to provide services to people outside its borders for the good of the country, but also for the good of those people as well. It's this kind of idea of government as a service, and not just for its own citizens, but for people interested in supporting and giving back to Estonia. So one thing that we've noticed over the 8-9 years that the program has been running, and I think this was a bit surprising to Estonia, is that e-residents say, like, they get a real feeling of being like a digital citizen of the country. And it makes them want to come here. It makes them want to meet Estonian people. It makes them, some of them even want to learn the language. They want to know about the history, the culture, everything. So not only does this program provide, some financial benefits in terms of taxes and indirect economic benefits, through the service providers that I mentioned, but it also provides socio-cultural benefits as well. And so I think that other countries could learn from that, not just for people outside their borders, maybe even for their own citizens, about how to actually serve their own citizens in a way that is helpful and useful and helps them grow as people. There are a few other countries who are providing e-residency-like programs. So I think Lithuania, which is our neighbour down here in the Baltics, they've set up a program. It's not quite as developed as the Estonian one. Portugal has also talked about it. It hasn't seemed to have gone any further recently, but they've also got something going on. And Dubai also have a similar program called the Virtual Company Creation Program, and Azerbaijan as well. So there are definitely countries who are like looking at it. Oh, and Ukraine as well.
Cool.
So I think that that sometimes, imitation is the best form of flattery. And I think we're actually quite happy to see that, because it means that there's more understanding about what it is and how it can help people. And, different countries can help different people from around the world in different ways. So, yeah, I think those are just a few examples of how other countries can learn from this program, for sure.
That is so true. But I think also it's understanding that like digital nomad tourism and like long stay visitors also like have just that little bit extra to add to countries as well. Like we're not just people who come in, visit a country and leave. Like there is actually a whole other like way that long stay visitors contribute to the countries they go to because of systems like e-Residency as well. So I think it's such an interesting conversation that's beginning to appear.
Yeah, and many of our e-residents are digital nomads themselves, and we're not expecting them to stay in Estonia at all. But the beauty of e-residency is that they don't have to. They can have their company based here, and then they can travel and they can go and stay in Portugal. They can go and stay in Cape Verde or in Mexico or whatever it is. But we have noticed that like many of sort of our old like OG e-residents, they do that, but they always come back at some point, and they come to these events like Latitude that we mentioned before. They, make some of their strategic board decisions in Estonia. They hire staff here or have like an office where they can come back to every year, once or twice a year. And that helps them not just keep close to the Estonian ecosystem and the people and the business culture as well, but also it helps them for tax purposes and for banking purposes as well. So it's quite clever the way that they've structured their operations, that they can still have the freedom to travel and be wherever they want, but they also have this sort of foot in the door in Estonia through their e-residency permit and also their company as well.
That all sounds super, super exciting. And honestly, I wish I could pick your brains more and chat to you more and hear more about your thoughts on it. But I'm just conscious of your time. So, final question that I like to ask everybody. So, fill in the blank. Home is where?
Oh, I think home is where the heart is, really. Wherever my heart is, that's where I am. And at the moment, my heart is with me, in myself. So
good. That's where we want it to be.
My spiritual heart, I should say.
I love that. Awesome. Well, Hannah, thank you so much for chatting to me today. And yeah, obviously everybody needs to go check out e-Residency and see what it's about. And the digital nomad visa for Estonia, right?
Yeah, so this is something that I didn't mention that I will just quickly plug, I think. The digital nomad visa is a separate program to e-Residency, but we still helped a little bit with the marketing of that program when it launched. So we do have some resources on our website, but most of the resources around the digital nomad visa are now on the Tourism Estonia website. But if anyone has any questions, they are most welcome to contact me and I can put you in touch with the right people. And yeah, so just wanted to make that clear that they are two separate things, and we can help with both if anyone has questions.
Amazing. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you, Han. It's been really, really nice talking to you today.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Remote Life. And thank you, Hannah, for taking the time to speak with us. You can find links to Hannah's profiles as well as the e-Residency website below. Thank you so much again for listening, and we can't wait to remote work with you again soon.